I tell you what, before we know it, we are going to be sitting back and enjoying what I think is going to be some brilliant summer tours for the Northern Hemisphere teams. Ireland playing South Africa, England heading to Japan and New Zealand. Wales' tour down under to face the Wallabies, I think is fascinating. They are not far away now. I know we've got the ends of the domestic season, but it'll be here before we know it. And last week, any of the England fans that are watching would have seen Steve Borthwick announce a 19-player England training squad. Bit random, I'm not sure how much you can do with 19 players. Doesn't include, obviously, all the players involved in the Gallagher Premiership semi-finals this weekend, but nonetheless, he has got some of the boys into camp. And that's what I thought I'd talk about in this video, because I think it throws up some interesting questions for Borthwick for these tours, in particular for certain positions, and the biggest omission is going to be Zack Mercer. So I'll give my view on that. You can have your say in the comments section. Which of these players do you want to see on tour, and what do you make of the Mercer, the fact that he's not included? You can let me know. Whilst you're here, if you fancy just liking the video, that gives it a little boost, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I massively appreciate that one. So a 19-player training squad, as I say, on the one hand, the cynical part of me is kind of like, what's the point? But from Borthwick's point of view, I completely get it, because as an international coach, the time you have boys in camp is at a premium. So if you can get some together, even if it's missing a lot of players that will be heading to Japan and New Zealand, it's still worthwhile. And I also think it's good time for him with certain players that are returning to the fold a little bit or haven't been involved before, maybe in a less daunting, less intimidating kind of atmosphere of a fully fledged camp. It's a good opportunity to get people involved for a week, a couple of weeks or so, or however long they have together. But as I say, it is missing the bulk of the players that are going to tour. So I'll be interested to know how much work they can really do. Let's get on to number 8. That is probably the biggest headline from this. Zack Mercer not involved, having been very good in a Gloucester team that have been very poor all season. He has often been the shining light for them, and I think understandably there will be a lot of people that think Zack Mercer is a number 8. When he went over to the top 14 with Montpellier, he was the player of the year over in France. He was absolutely outstanding. He's been excellent again this year, and he adds something different to that England back row. He is a different type of number 8, comparing him with, say, Ben Earl and Alex Dombrandt, who I think are the guys that are ahead of him in the pecking order at the moment. He brings something different with his footwork and just how good he's been in terms of picking on form. You would have expected Zack Mercer to be there. I get it. I personally, if I was Steve Borthwick, would have brought him into camp to have a look at him. I also don't think it is the travesty that maybe some of you or some people, some fans might think. Because as I say, at the moment, for me, Ben Earl is obviously the England number 8. It's his shirt at the moment because he's been sensational in the Six Nations and at the World Cup last year. I also think Alex Dombrandt has played himself back into being in a position where he should be the number 2. I spoke about this when I did my team of the season for the Premiership. I think Alex Dombrandt has gone a bit under the radar of how much his game has improved from a defensive point of view. He was second in the league behind Will Evans in terms of steals. That Harlequins back row were lethal of stealing it at the breakdown. I think he's more physical from watching him, from having seen him in the flesh. To me, it seems like he's taken his physicality and defence up to a different level. Plus, he can still do some of the stuff that we've seen him do previously. Now, I know he hasn't always set the world alight when he's been in an England camp, and therefore you might argue that Mercer deserves that opportunity, but I still think actually on form Dombrandt deserves to be there. And Greg Fisselau is a guy that is involved in this camp. The 20-year-old Exeter Chiefs, number 8, had a really good season with the Chiefs. I like the fact that they're having a look at him. So as I say, if I was Borthwick, I probably would get Mercer in, because what do you lose? What is there to lose? But I think looking at the options that England will have available to them, I still think there's some good options there. Ultimately, I do wonder whether Zack Mercer was a little too forthright with some of his comments around the time of the Six Nations squad. He was pretty punchy with kind of feeling like he was getting ignored and giving up on it, and can't remember the exact quote, but words to that effect. I wonder whether that's played against him and whether Steve Borthwick has been frustrated about that. So I'm surprised he's not there, but I think there's good options. Let's look at what else this squad tells us about where England are at the moment, because I think it is quite revealing in some other areas. In particular, what are the injuries England have at the moment? And it's front row with Ellis Genge going down, and I think it's second row with Ollie Chesham also missing the tour as well. Those are the two obvious ones for me. Now, it's intriguing that there's no Joe Marler or no Dan Cole in this squad. I think they will still tour with England this summer. I think they still have quite a significant part to play in this team and in the solidity of the England scrum. So I think they will still go, but who have we got here? We've got Finn Baxter and we've got Joe Hayes. Finn Baxter will go. He's had a great season for Quins. And Joe Hayes, Borthwick knows him from his Leicester Tigers days. I think there's a good chance that he ends up going on the summer tour as well. So I think that is an area to keep an eye on. It was an issue at the World Cup, the front row for England. It's going to be an issue again, losing someone like Ellis Genge, particularly with his ball carrying. So who steps up in his place? And then in terms of in the second row, Ollie Chesham out injured. George Martin is there. He will be involved. He's been excellent, I think, for England. Rusi Tuima, again, another extra player who's had a very, very good season. And again, is someone I think that is likely we possibly see them go. So, I don't know, maybe those are the players at the forefront of Steve Borthwick's mind at the moment for who could cover some of those injuries they have. A few other positions that are just worth mentioning. Gabriel Ogre getting the call up at hooker over Harry Thacker. His club teammate is one of the things that I think stands out to me. I fear that Harry Thacker is going to be one of those players that we all look back on and feel he deserves far more international recognition than he has ever got, really. Because Ogre, Theo Dan as well are a bit more in the Thacker mould. They're quite good all round the park, rather than just being a set-piece hooker. But if you look at England in terms of the hooking stocks as well, so Jamie George will be the starting hooker. Theo Dan, I think, will then be the backup. So it's that kind of third place. I'm delighted to see Ogre there. I think he's been really good for Bristol. I think he deserves an opportunity. I hope he impresses in camp. I do feel sorry for Harry Thacker. I think he's been such a good player in the Premiership for such a long time and has just never quite received the plaudits that maybe he deserves. I remember Pat Lam a few years ago kind of saying, if Harry Thacker was an All Black, if Harry Thacker was a New Zealander, he would be an All Black. He would get opportunities for them because his all-round game is so good. But there we are. The one other position I want to mention is scrum-half. Obviously, Ben Youngs has retired. Danny Kerr has also now announced his international retirement. So Alex Mitchell, I would presume, is still the number one. Who gets selected after that? It will be really interesting to see if Ben Spencer does with Bath, who has just been brilliant, but has often again been one of those players that hasn't quite broke through with England in the way that you would expect his club form to deliver. And then if you look at the scrum halves in this squad, and you look at Jack Van Portfleet and you look at Harry Randall, are they therefore one of them, maybe both of them, but are one of them going to get an opportunity to go on tour? I'd like to see it be Harry Randall, because I think Jack Van Portfleet looked good when he first came into the England team, then struggled a little bit. He then got that really awful injury, didn't he, which meant he missed out on the World Cup entirely and then has come back this season. I'm not sure he's quite back to his best, whereas I think Harry Randall has been very, very good and gives you a pace to your game and a zip that England could possibly really do with as they go on this tour. So I'd like to see Randall, but that is a position worth keeping an eye on. And then Luke Northmore, actually, is just the other guy to mention. Again, someone else who's been out for a long time with injury, who prior to the injury had been playing really well for Quins. England centres always seem to be up in the air on where they go and who they select. So I'll be interested to see if he also gets a call up into the full-on touring party. Outside of that, what else catches your eye? Those are the main things for me. But who else there? Do you want to talk about Max Malins or a Charlie Atkinson? Atkinson, I think, is one of those, my gut instinct is he's there for a bit of experience, but I'm not sure we'll see him on the tour. But anyway, let me know, what do you make of this team? What do you think are the big question marks facing Steve Borthwick? And the biggest question of all, I suppose, is what do you make of the news that Zack Mercer, at the moment, looks to be out in the international wilderness a little bit? Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.